Love this podcast? Support this show through the Acast supporter feature. It's up to you how much you give, and there's no regular commitment. Just click the link in the show description to support now.
You're locked in.
Look at what we have here, folks.
To the only show that matters.
The cream of the crop.
Duke loves wrestling.
And there is no one that does it better than
your host.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
The Duke.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
The wrestling world, and really the sports world, has been rocked by the announcement by the one and only Jeannie Buss, owner of WOW Superheroes, that she just signed, literally, the most talked about rookie that has come along in pro wrestling in many years. Okay? This young lady has really taken the world by storm, and the story's been covered by everyone from Wrestling Inc. to Sports Illustrated, ESPN, you name it. Everyone's excited about the fact that wrestling royalty, the daughter of the Hall of Famer Rowdy Roddy Piper, we're talking about Teal Piper. She is going to be stepping in the ring as the newest member of the WOW Superheroes roster. So without further ado, welcome to the Duke Loves Rasslin podcast, Teal Piper. How are you, Teal?
I'm great, man. How are you?
I am fantastic. Listen, this is really incredible, and I don't think anyone saw this coming. You were literally the hottest rookie to come along in years. How does that feel?
It's exciting. No pressure at all. It's, I've been harboring this secret for a while now. I tried to keep it quiet while I figured out, I wanted to get in the ring and take some bumps and kind of, assess things before I just came out there with it. So it's really nice to have it out in the open and be able to talk about it now, because I am really excited to be a part of the wrestling community now.
Well, it's impressive. And I mean, when we talk about WOW Superheroes, they just had their debut of season 2 on Access TV. So remember, folks, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Saturday evening, you can catch WOW Superheroes season 2, which Teal is going to be mixing it up. She's going to be a part of. I mean, what a promotion to sign up with. Being affiliated with Jeannie Buss, and of course you have the Access TV owners there, including Mark Cuban. This is a heck of a way to make a splash.
Yeah, I couldn't be more thrilled. They're such a great company, and one of the reasons I felt pushed in their direction was just they've done so much for women in wrestling, and David McLean has been pushing this show and this idea for so long now, and they just killed it in season 1, and it's just something I really wanted to be a part of. So I jumped on that opportunity. I couldn't be more thrilled to be working with them.
It's interesting because, WOW Superheroes, you have such a strong roster. I mean, I think about, obviously we've got to talk about Tessa Blanchard, who's the WOW Superheroes champion, but then you have the Beast, and you have Jesse Jones, and you have all of these different competitors who, Jungle Girl, everybody who are take no prisoners, kick a bunch of butts kind of people. Are you concerned that you're going to be a target, considering the fact that you're the daughter of a Hall of Famer?
I was concerned about that before I even made the announcement. I think as a daughter of somebody in the industry, you feel that just going into training. You never know how, there's always going to be those people that resent you for having opportunity. And there's nothing I can do about that. That's just how I was born. That is my life. All I can do is work my hardest to prove that I deserve to be there. So there's definitely going to be a target on my back, but I would like to say that there's nobody who's targeting me that I'm not targeting back. So I have my eye on a lot of these people and would love a match with any of them that want to challenge me out to one.
Whoa, she's not playing around. I hope you other ladies are paying attention here. And, we had Selena Majors on, who is, head trainer over there at the WOW Superheroes training facility. And she told me that she's teaching you a few things there and making sure that you're going to be ready to go and defend yourself when some of these other ladies try to mess with you. Talk to us about your training. How has that been coming along so far?
Well, I couldn't be more grateful to have somebody as amazing as Selena Majors take me under their wing and train me. You know, she definitely understands the pressure that I'm under and the steep learning curve, in the eyes that are on me. So she's been working, everybody there, all the trainers, but you know, they've been working very hard with me to make sure that I'm the best athlete I can be and that I'm prepared for these situations. And, you know, sometimes they're a little hard, but that's what I expected, and I'm grateful for it. You know, they definitely want to make sure that when I do get in the ring and have my first solo match with whoever it is and moving forward in my career, that I'm prepared for anything they might throw at me. So it's been, you know, there's definitely been some bruises along the way, but it's been very awesome to have that kind of mentorship.
Now, you've been around the pro wrestling industry your entire life. I mean, again, you are the daughter of the Hall of Famer Roddy Piper, legitimately one of the most beloved wrestlers of all time, and really somebody who would do anything and everything to make sure that people didn't mess with him because he was a tough customer. Are there any lessons that you learned growing up, especially from your dad, that you feel will be something you can apply over WoW Superheroes?
You know, he was definitely one of the big differences in our lives was my dad was, you know, he was brought up very hard edge and very streetwise. And, you know, I always hear from wrestlers that he was the one guy in the locker room no one messed around with. Especially later in his career, you know, he was very smart in that way. And I had the blessing of growing up with him, you know, kind of protecting me from having to have that kind of lifestyle. So, as part of that, he definitely taught me a lot of how the business runs and how, you know, the psychology of the ring. And there's so many lessons in there on that side and the business side and the street smart side going into it that I feel very lucky to have known, because he never wanted me to be naive. You know, he knew that I could always run into these situations, and he was never wanted me to be unprepared or naive and, you know, had something pulled over me. So I feel very fortunate that I had that. I wish he was still around so I could train with him in the ring now. But then again, who knows how he would react.
Sure, that's saying a mouthful right there. He probably want to get in there and mess up anybody who even looked at you the wrong way. Because, you know, Roddy was crazy. Wow.
He was very protective of his family, let's put it that way.
Absolutely. In fact, I think back, you know, they had that episode of Wife Swap, which is still a popular episode of that show that folks like to send out. Remember when Roddy and Ric Flair swapped wives for a period of time and what have you?
Oh yeah, I definitely remember that. I wasn't in town for that episode, so I wasn't on it, but I definitely got a full breakdown from my siblings that were on it, my mom and everything.
Oh,
I think my mom really came out the star of that episode, by the way. We used to make fun of Dad for that. We were like, wow, Mom's really shining in this episode.
Well, this is what I'm getting at here. I mean, you know, of course everyone's going to ask you about your Hall of Fame dad who's in the wrestling business, but your mom is really a take charge, not playing around kind of person. How much of that has rubbed off on you as well?
You know, Dad used to say she's the only person in the world he was truly afraid of, and he would call her his little poisonous dwarf. But she, you know, I think being married to Roddy Piper, you have probably had to have a firm grasp on things. You know, she had to be a no bullshit person because he just gave you so much bullshit in life, you know? He delivered that by the gallon, so she had to, you know, be that way. But I've learned a lot from my mom. You know, I think she really, I think that without my mom, my dad wouldn't have lived so long. I think that she is what kept him going and kept him out of the real trouble and, you know, kept him focused on the things that mattered to him in his life to give him more happiness over the years. So, you know, I think I got a very, very interesting dynamic of parents, but one that in the long run was a great balance to me being the awesome person I am now.
We're talking to Teal Piper, literally wrestling royalty and the newest signee of WoW Superheroes, which you're going to be able to catch her Saturday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Access TV. Now, Teal, one of the things that has really shocked me about you, it's clear you have no fear. I'm sitting there the other night, and I'm watching the AEW pay-per-view, All Out, and, you know, literally the first match of the night is a 21-woman battle royal And I'm sitting there, just kind of paying attention. I'm seeing all of these stars, past, present. And then I see the future of wrestling royalty. Teal Piper comes out. What on earth got into your mind that made you decide to step into the ring, literally like a big Shark Tank, with all of these women all at once?
Maybe I don't have fear, or maybe I'm just an idiot and don't know what I've gotten myself into. But I'm one of those people that I'm either 100% in or I'm 100% out, and there's nothing in between. So once I decided to make that leap into wrestling, I wanted to go big. And I would like to argue that I quite possibly had the biggest first match as far as an audience goes in the history. I mean, all the wrestlers I know had 20 people at their first match. And so, there was no pressure at all on me coming out, but I felt honored to be in the ring with that level of talent. I just thought, even though I didn't last as long as I really hoped I would have, it was my first match, guys. Give me a break. I'll come back. I'll get my revenge. You'll see. But, I think that it was just awesome to be in the ring with those girls. And, once you're down there and you're in it, you can't have fear, because that's how people, that's how things go really wrong. You just have to be 100% going at it and hope that you made the right move, and then you can reflect back on fear later.
Well, if you can hold your own in a big battle royal like that, I can't wait to see what you do when you're in the ring one-on-one with some of these ladies in Wild Superheroes. That's going to get really interesting, because if there's one thing that you proved, it's certainly that not only are you someone with a lot of heart, you're pretty tough. So I can't wait to see what's going to happen here. What can we expect? What can we expect with Season 2, especially with wrestling royalty Teal Piper, Wild Superheroes on Access TV? What are the fans going to get when they tune in and see Teal Piper out?
Well, I can't give away too much. I want everyone to tune in and watch the show. But what I can say is my plan, wrestling is very spontaneous, right? You never know how it's going to happen. Things always change on a dime. My personal plan, I'm going to get in there and I'm just going to stir the pot. I want to mess with the girls. I want to get in their head, and I want to kind of see where everyone's at and see where my matches are going to go. I don't want to tell anybody what they're going to be viewing, because you'll have to check it out. Definitely come to the Belasco Theater in downtown LA on the 18th and 19th of September if you guys are available, so you can watch it live. But I think the more seasons of WoW, the more Teal Piper will be taking it, and hopefully at some point I will be getting a championship belt. That is my goal.
Wow, you heard it here first, folks. I mean, Teal Piper, she will step in the ring and take on 20 other women in a battle royal. She'll walk into Wild Superheroes and have an expectation that not only is she going to challenge for a championship, she expects to win a championship. This is a young lady that means business, and this is exactly why you need to tune in. Wild Superheroes, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're in Season 2 on Access TV. And like she said, if you want to see Teal Piper live and in color, if you want to see her kick some butt right in front of you there, then you got to head over to the Belasco Theater September 18th and 19th. This is the Wild Superhero live events in Los Angeles. Please don't miss it. Teal, is there anything else you want to say to your fans out there before we let you go?
I just want to say, whether you love me or hate me, just yell it at me. I love when people are vocal. I have a lot of mixed reactions from fans, and that makes me really happy. I love that you guys are all very confused of what you think about me. Please check out wowie.com for more information on Women of Wrestling and their events and the superheroes they have there. Check out myself. I'm going to be live tweeting September 7th, but probably in the future as well for the season premieres, because I'll be watching them with the rest of you. So check me out on Twitter at Ariel Teal, Instagram and Facebook, Teal Piper. Check out my book, The Rowdy Piper Story, off Amazon, and, just keep it tabs on me. And, I hope that you guys like what I have to offer. And if not, I hope you throw things.
Teal Piper means business. Okay? That's what everybody needs to understand, folks. Teal Piper, she might be a rookie, but you heard it straight from her mouth. Her father the Hall of Famer Rowdy Roddy Piper, he's taught her how to handle herself, how to deal with people if she has to really get down and dirty. She's also being trained by Selena Majors over there at the WoW Superheroes facility there. She is built and ready to kick some butt. So that was a fun interview. It was so fun that I had to start the show off with it, folks. That's what we're talking about. And this is exactly why you got to check out WoW Superheroes Saturdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Access TV. Fun programming, great talent there, as you continue to hear on the Duke Loves Rasslin podcast during my WoW Superheroes feature. And I'm going to keep that ball rolling. You know, we're going to continue to have some of the top talent in pro wrestling. Okay, talent from WoW Superheroes, because really, you know, a lot of these young ladies, they've been all over the world and have done some great things. And then you have a rookie like Teal Piper, who grew up in a wrestling household. It's really interesting perspectives that everyone is sharing with us here. And it's great to see these stars that you can tune in and watch on TV. It's great to hear some of this behind the scenes stuff and their true feelings on what's going on. So again, shout out to WoW Superheroes and Teal Piper. And hey, welcome back to Duke Loves Rasslin. Like I said, it was kind of an interesting way to start the show, but that was just such a fun conversation that we had that I figured, you know something, let's just jump right out of the box with it. This week, you know, like I promised you last week, I have part 2 of my great discussion with Harry Burkett of Pro Wrestling Illustrated. So that's going to be coming up a little later. But, you know, before we get to any of that stuff here, it's time to talk about the top stories in the world of professional wrestling. And we can just keep this train going and talk about WoW Superheroes here. Their debut episode for season 2 was a smash hit. And I can tell you, folks, because I was live tweeting the entire time. And boy, first of all, you know, Access TV had the Saturday Slamathon, which was excellent. Gave folks a chance to catch up on things that they may have missed from season 1. But they also had other features in there leading up to the season 2 debut, WoW Superheroes at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And boy, it was just a great episode. The very first match was Jesse Jones taking on Fire. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? 2 of the top wrestling stars in the world in the ring, beating the heck out of each other to start off season 2 for WoW Superheroes. And Jesse Jones got the win. I'll tell you though, Fire, she's pretty tough in her own right. She definitely held her own, and she almost defeated Jesse Jones, not once, but twice during that match. So if you have a chance, folks, definitely go back and take a look at that, because boy, what a way to start off a new season. And you know, the entire episode, like I said, it was excellent. The Psycho Sisters, they, as David McClain told us 2 weeks ago, they were completely on fire. The fans loved them. They got one of the loudest crowd reactions of the night. Another person who got a tremendous crowd reaction was Havoc. There's something going on with Havoc, folks. In fact, I put up a poll, and Havoc won the poll. What was the poll about? Well, at the end of the episode, there was an issue and a match was happening and they didn't declare a winner. So in the end, Tessa Blanchard, the WoW Superheroes women's champion there, she let everybody know that next week, the next episode of WoW Superheroes, so that's going to be this Saturday here, she's going to choose who her opponent is going to be, and she's going to defend the WoW Superheroes Championship on that episode. So that's going to be crazy. And who's it going to be? Is it going to be Havoc? All my listeners out there, you voted and you said it. You want it to be Havoc. Is it going to be Havoc? Is it going to be The Beast? Maybe it's going to be Jungle Girl, the legend, the WoW Superheroes legend there. So who knows? We're going to have to tune in and find out. It could be somebody else for all we know. I mean, it's wild, man. But that's what WoW is. Unpredictable, exciting wrestling action. And I'm really enjoying what they're putting out there. So keep it up there, the WoW Superheroes team. Another top story here is Jim Cornette. Jim Cornette has officially signed with the NWA. So their broadcast that they're going to be putting out weekly, looks like it's going to be what we would traditionally call a TV show. I don't know if it's going to be on TV or if it's going to be exclusively on the web, but their weekly show, Jim Cornette is going to be one of the commentators for that show. So congratulations to Cornette and NWA. You know, that's pretty classic stuff there. They have a long storied history with each other. It's kind of interesting. I know a lot of folks out there are really bent out of shape over Jim Cornette, and a lot of you feel justified. I've definitely had my fair share of button heads with Cornette, so I'm not going to act like he and I are buddy-buddy. But I will admit that I think that some things may be a little misunderstood. Some things. There are a lot of things that are justified. There's no excuse for the way that Jim Cornette flies completely off the handle and gives you a cuss out sandwich every other word that comes out of his mouth. I mean, I just think that's a little crass. With that said, I think some of the things is just a lot of, he's playing up to his gimmick and folks are taking it a little more seriously than what's intended, which, hey, who am I to tell you shouldn't take seriously when somebody is talking to you in a derogatory manner? He said some things that folks have said are homophobic and sexist and this and that. He actually called Jordan Grace a butterface, which that ain't cool. But they're in the wrestling business. Are they doing this to generate heat and put Jordan Grace over? Is this some kind of, mastermind gimmick thing that they have going on? I don't know. Allegedly, that's not the case, and he's just being mean to her, but it's wrestling, man. You can never really tell what the heck's going on. So if it's real life and he really said that about Jordan Grace, then shame on you, Jim Cornette, and cut it out. It's unacceptable. And if it's just them trying to work the fans, which a lot of folks in the business do, then hey, kudos to you both, because a lot of folks are buying it. So I don't know. But again, congratulations, NWA. Congratulations, Jim Cornette. I think it's a good move. I think having a classic voice to call your wrestling content, that's always a good move. It makes sense. And just pair them up with somebody young that can learn from them. And that's how you keep this train rolling. So good stuff there. Good stuff. The next item, which is a really interesting one. Congratulations to Cedric Alexander. Cedric defeated AJ Styles in the main event for Raw this past week. Can you believe that? Cedric beat the future Hall of Famer AJ Styles. AJ Styles has held championships everywhere, all over the world. He's a world-class athlete, absolutely one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. And Cedric was able to defeat him. He defeated him clean on Raw in front of the world. So that's just, man, keep an eye on Cedric. Cedric got some stuff going on here, Jack, and it's all good stuff too. So I'm loving that. Speaking of Cedric, I hope his wife, Big Swole, Ariel Monroe, I hope she gets an opportunity at WWE. That would be cool. I'm pretty sure she competed in the Mae Young Classic, now that I think about it. But it would be cool to see her actually on a roster, because she can go too. Big fan of her. Shout out to Ariel Monroe. Shout out to Cedric Alexander. Good guy. Real good dude. I heard Cedric do an interview with Dave LaGreca and Mark Henry on Busted Open, where he talked about fatherhood and what pro wrestling means to him and family and all that good stuff. Just Cedric's a good guy. So we definitely are rooting for Cedric, and we want to continue to see him achieve everything, because that's a good dude, man. That's definitely somebody to root for. So speaking of WWE and Raw, they returned to Madison Square Garden. Okay, so this is something that hasn't happened in a while, where they've had a televised event, Madison Square Garden. They returned, and it was a smash hit. It was great. In fact, for all you ratings junkies out there, the TV ratings, the only thing that defeated them was Monday Night Football and related programming. I think Sports Center and the lead up to Monday Night Football, those are the only programs that beat Monday Night Raw. But, Raw was definitely one of the top shows and key demos and what have you. So that's always cool. Ironically, SmackDown, they were number one overall. They beat everybody, SmackDown. And it's kind of funny because some of you out there say, the ratings were down from last week, or the ratings are down from last year, or whatever. You and your ratings. Take a look at the whole thing and you will see that Raw and SmackDown continue to consistently be one of the top shows on TV. They're always in the top 10. Raw is usually in the top 3. SmackDown is usually in the top 7. And that's just the way it is. And let me tell you something. Losing a Monday Night Football is not a bad thing. Losing a Sports Center is not a bad thing. I mean, it happens, especially this time of year. But they beat everybody else. Give me a break. It's good stuff, man. So clearly something is clicking. Clearly, out of the folks who are consuming TV in the manner that Nielsen measures, keep in mind, it's not the most accurate way to measure. I'm going to keep saying that. But based on their criteria, Raw and SmackDown are still up there with the big guys. They are the big guys. The big dogs on the lot. So, got to give props where props is due.
And the number one story in the world of professional wrestling is Anthem Sports takes over Access TV. That's right, folks, Anthem. Okay, and I know some of you are sitting there saying, well, who the heck is Anthem? What does that matter? Well, Anthem is the company that owns Impact Wrestling. Yeah. And as you know, Access TV, that's the place that's airing WoW Superheroes, and it's airing New Japan Pro Wrestling each week on Saturdays. So this is a really interesting thing. And it was announced today that Impact Wrestling is going to be moving to Access TV as well. So there's going to be more wrestling on that network. There's a lot going on, and I figured, something, let me reach out to somebody who can decipher some of this information for me and help me make it make sense. So welcome back to Duke Loves Wrestling podcast from The Wrap. Mr. Tony Maglio, how are you, Mags?
Good, man. How's it going, Duke?
I don't know what's going on. My head is upside down, Mags, because there's just so much wrestling content and moves and shakes. Everyone is gearing up for these, what do you call it, the fall sweeps? I just don't know what the heck's going on here, man. So can you break down this whole Access TV Anthem Sports thing for us?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think you did a nice job breaking it down yourself. But Access, as you said, is the home, at least in America, for New Japan. Not live, obviously, a little bit delayed. And they are the home for WoW Women of Wrestling. And as you know, as a fan, they have a lot of MMA as well. And for people who would only turn it on for the fight stuff, Access really made its bones with concert programming, and they do a lot of, countdown music shows and some reality shows and some, in-depth interview shows. So anyway, Anthem and Access had been in talks for about 6 months. I was told this deal was in the works, and some of us knew it was on and then off and then on and then off, and then who knows, and a bunch of posturing from both sides. And the interesting thing is this is not a huge company buying a small company. This is a company of about 125 people buying a company of about 125 people. And so now they're one. And to the surprise of absolutely nobody, I don't know, what are we, 2 days removed, 3 days removed from the purchase, they finally publicly announced that Impact Wrestling would be moving from the Pursuit channel to Access. We don't have a time slot yet. We don't have a night yet. That's an interesting thing to get into. But yeah, now Mark Cuban, who was the remaining main proprietor, I guess you could say, of Access TV, has sold a majority stake to Anthem, and then a group owned by Steve Harvey. It's mostly focused on Anthem. And now, who knows? Who knows what the future is at Access? I reported yesterday or the day before there would be 40 layoffs. A lot of good people are out of jobs. A lot of people that your audience might know that did a lot of work on New Japan and on Women of Wrestling as well. So what the future for Impact looks like on Access, we don't quite know. We just know when it's coming, after its October, I believe, 20th pay-per-view. And we know that it will have better distribution because Access is available to more than 50 million U.S. homes, whereas the Pursuit channel, where previously is available to 35 million homes. So it's a very good thing for Impact Wrestling as a business. It's a good thing for Impact Wrestling fans. It's a good thing for wrestling fans that have Access TV and had no idea where the Pursuit channel was. And the wrestling wars just keep getting bigger and more interesting, and it's all happening in October.
And that's the crazy part about it. I mean, it's all happening in October, and correct me if I'm wrong, November is the period or time of year when more people are watching TV than any other period. Is that correct?
It's a good question. I actually don't quite know the answer in 2019. I mean, it probably is. There are multiple sweeps periods throughout the year. But I mean, practically speaking, you have new fall shows returning and launching in September. I think the Nielsen the Nielsen season starts the day after the Emmys, which I believe makes it the 23rd of September. So you got September probably out because one big week of TV. And then you got football heating up as the season goes on, and football is still the number one show in America. So, it's an interesting question, one that, I haven't looked at in a while, and I probably should. So I'm glad you brought it up. But yeah, that seems like it would stand to reason. We certainly have sweeps periods before and after that. But yeah, this fall is going to be just crazy, and especially for wrestling fans. You will find no shortage of available content if you are a wrestling fan.
That's the truth. I mean, at least 5 days a week, fans can depend on seeing wrestling content, and that includes Sunday, which is a traditional pay-per-view day. If you have, at least three promotions, WWE, AEW, and Impact, who do pay-per-views throughout the 12-month calendar year, you can expect to see a pay-per-view at least 3 times a month. So it's going to get real interesting, and that's going to be a lot of hours spent consuming a lot of wrestling content, which between you and I, Mags, I'm not complaining, just so we can put that on the table. I want to go back to something
you don't have kids.
Well, yeah, exactly. If it had kids, that would probably be a different story, but, I want to go back to a name that you mentioned, though. You said Steve Harvey. And yes, folks, he's talking about that Steve Harvey, the king of comedy, the guy that's done Family Feud and the Steve Harvey show, both the comedy show and the talk show and all this other stuff. Where does he fit into this, and who is he connected with?
So his Steve Harvey Global has a content development deal there, and I guess they also get a board seat at Anthem. So I don't want to overblow their role here. This is an Anthem acquisition, an Anthem company, but given the prominence of Steve Harvey and kind of the hilarity of the fact that Steve Harvey is involved here, we all are more than quick to point out that Steve Harvey and the Steve Harvey Global has a hand in this acquisition.
That is just an amazing thing from various standpoints. I mean, number one, you have so few people of color who are in such a position, because if I'm not mistaken, he's going to be on the board, right?
Yeah, I don't know that Steve will personally sit on the board. Someone from his company will. He's got a finance say and a creative say. God, could you imagine Steve Harvey having the time to sit on a board? Maybe he will. Maybe he'll be, a board member that can show up when they show up and vote by proxy when they don't. But, yeah, I mean, that guy's got the only thing he has more than power is stuff to do. I mean, quick Steve Harvey aside anecdote. I think 2 weeks ago or something, I reported, and this wasn't like a scoop or anything. It was widely announced. Steve is hosting 2 more Family Feuds in Africa. He's hosting them. He's not just, they're not just spinning off Family Feud locally in Africa. Steve will be there hosting these 2 series. They're not 2 specials. They're series. So this guy, he doesn't sleep.
Yeah, I can't even wrap my head around that. I mean, he must be cloning himself there, Max, because that just is it blows my mind. But it's crazy because we know that there's been some shuffling around on TV. At least one of his shows, and it might have been his talk show, has been replaced with Kelly Clarkson's new talk show.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that frees up a little bit of space for him. Now he's in a situation where he's, there's a board seat at a network. You got to imagine Steve Harvey and his company, they're going to be developing content for Access TV. I can't imagine that that's not going to happen.
Sure.
We could see an entire revamp, potentially, of what Access TV is and the quality of programming through his connections in particular, that could be brought over to that station.
Look, it's very possible one of the trends in the broader TV landscape is kind of bringing in super producers and super creators to these mega deals. I mean, today we finally got the Warner Media J.J. Abrams deal announced. You got Kenya Barris left ABC for Netflix. You got Ryan Murphy's humongous deal at Netflix. You got Shonda Rhimes' humongous deal there. So there's certainly an arms race for talent and for kind of just, to be honest with you, just letting talent kind of do whatever they want to do on your platform, kind of tying a talented person to your network, so that when you think of that person, you think of the network and vice versa. It's interesting because when it comes to Steve, Steve used to do a lot of stand-up. He was one of the original Kings of Comedy on that tour. He had a few sitcoms, and, I think of him as a comic and as an actor, but he really has transitioned much more into a personality as the daytime shows, 2 different shows, as you mentioned. He hosted, the NBC series, with the kids, the kid talent show. I can't even think of it right now off the top of my head. Little Big Shots. And, Family Feud, obviously, he's basically revitalized that entire franchise, and now they have the primetime edition, Celebrity Family Feud or whatever in the summers. It's still a pretty big hit. I mean, he's a machine. He's a machine who never stops working. But what's interesting is he doesn't do as much scripted fare certainly as he used to, and as much scripted fare as a lot of these big creators who are getting brought in under these big deals do. So all of that being said, I'm sure he has surrounded himself with a lot of talented people at his company. I don't know what the content deal with Steve Harvey Global could put on Access. It could be scripted. It could be unscripted. They don't really they wouldn't really benefit from a sitcom from him. But, he prints money. He is a success. He is a name. He is very well known. And, the more talent Access can get, the better, because I don't think they have a perfectly great identity right now. And hopefully this deal with Anthem is going to start to give them a little bit more of an identity, maybe better distribution, and maybe a little bit more household recognition.
Wow. Yeah, that's a heck of a way to look at it, and certainly when you take somebody like a Steve Harvey and their star power, that's a great way to start building off of that. And the fact that they brought over Impact Wrestling, from a wrestling fan's perspective, that makes me feel good, because that lets me know that we can expect to continue to see pro wrestling on Access TV, at least in the immediate future. So that definitely feels good.
And even more than you're used to seeing. But you're right. That's a really good point, is that I guess a concern could be, oh no, there's a new owner. Are they going to say, what is this nonsense, and get rid of, New Japan and Women of Wrestling? But hey, the owner is called Anthem Sports and Entertainment, but Anthem Sports, and they come with Impact Wrestling. So, they get it, they know it, and it was very clearly a priority that they wanted to get, their first announcement after the deal was Impact. Yep, Impact is coming to Access, and that shouldn't stun anybody who follows these things at all. I think we all were just waiting on that deal to be announced. But yeah, you're right in that if some random company bought Access for, its distribution or whatever, there may be casualties in the terms of the fight game and the fake fighting game, but not these guys. These guys are like, oh, thank God, we've got a new home for Impact.
We're talking to Tony Maglio. He is the TV editor of The Wrap. Real quick, Mags, there's an interesting thing going on, and even this week, I'm noticing that a lot of folks in the wrestling media they're reporting the fact that both Raw and SmackDown, their television ratings were lower this week than the previous week, and they're low compared to last year, and all this other nonsense here. Despite the fact that for Raw, the only thing that beat them was Monday Night Football and Sports Center, football-related content. Nothing else beat them in the top 150 and key downloads. Right. And you look at SmackDown. SmackDown was number one, despite this whole call about ratings being down and all this garbage. So a lot of folks continue to miss the concept of it's all relative. You got to compare it to how everybody else today is doing and see where they land. And now you're getting a much better perspective on what's going on. I want to shift the conversation to something that you and I continuously talk about, and that's these Nielsen ratings. Mm-hmm. I got information that Nielsen is actually going to be adjusting their rating system. They must have been listening to you and I talk here, Max. They're going to be adjusting their rating system because they know that the way that they've been doing things is not the most accurate way to measure who is watching what and at what time. Talk to us about this new adjustment to the rating system, if you can break it down to us real quick.
Yeah, and hopefully I don't bore people to death. So what Nielsen's doing is starting in early October 3rd to be specific, they're going to change what they call their overnight ratings reporting. And overnight ratings are exactly what they are. They get them overnight from the previous night. And they're the earliest available TV ratings from Nielsen. So the good thing, they're good for two reasons. They're good because they're early, and they're good because they're adjusted for time zone differences. And the reason that matters is if, you and I are both on the East Coast, but if I'm out west for a conference and we're both watching, let's say, the Patriots game, then, I'm not counted. I mean, I'm not a Nielsen panelist, so maybe an imperfect example, but West Coast people are not counted as the same way as East Coast would because it's not 8 o'clock for both of us, right? So the overnight ratings are good because they adjust for time zones. The reason they're not so great is because they only encapsulate 56 markets, and they're 56 big markets, so it's pretty good. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. So here's the thing. So they're going to start counting fewer markets, something like a dozen fewer or 13 fewer, but they're going to start including what they call out-of-home viewership. And so what that means is if you and I are at a bar up in Boston watching the Patriots, we wouldn't have previously been counted. You could pack 200 people into a bar watching football, watching the baseball playoffs, watching mixed martial arts, whatever are really big bar sports, and those people are not counted. Now, the reality of it is none of us are Nielsen panelists. It's a small percentage of the population, and then they extrapolate it over the whole population, blah, 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 blah. But the point is they will start doing different mathematics that will start adding a few million viewers because they recognize that millions of viewers are watching football at a bar every Sunday, so on and so forth. So we're going to get these overnight ratings later. They're going to have fewer markets, but they will have out-of-home measurement, which basically means, to my knowledge, that every football game is going to be much higher rated now because they're finally counting people at bars. And that kind of plays in for other sports. It certainly plays in. For wrestling, I don't think wrestling is a big bar sport. Pay-per-views are a different story, but pay-per-views are not on broadcast or cable anyway. But MMA and other live sports are all of a sudden going to be higher rated than they were in the past. So, you had mentioned apples to orange comparisons. There's going to be more apples to orange comparisons, and everything's going to look a little bit better. So that's probably way too complicated and way too in the weeds. But yeah, they're changing those. They're not going to change, other ways of viewing things. But these overnight numbers, the national numbers will always be what they were. And then eventually they will probably add in like bar viewership and hotel viewership. So eventually, the Super Bowl numbers, the Super Bowl total viewer numbers will probably go up. But in the interim, what's going to happen is these first available numbers, the very first things you read in the morning, those will suddenly be higher than they used to be, except they won't be the first thing you read in the morning anymore, because to get those bar viewership numbers, it's going to be multi-hour delay. So it's a lot, is what I'm saying.
Well, it's, for wrestling fans, which is what we are, it definitely is something to keep in the back of your head, folks, because, and Tony has been gracious, and the multiple times he's been on the show to kind of point this out. These networks, they want more live sports-like content, sports-related content. And we know, like a show, like what AEW is going to provide on TNT or SmackDown or Raw, whatever, those are live sports-like content mediums there. So it is a possibility that, these bars and different venues and what have you could be putting this stuff on, and that might get picked up. That's going to drive the ratings up. And
yeah, it'll drive the earliest ones up, and then it'll at some point down the road when Nielsen is able to implement it for all of its ratings. For when you see a number, when someone writes so and so was watched by 3 million viewers, those are not the ratings that are going to change anyway. The ratings are going to change is going to be like, it got a 4.6, 22 share, like things that don't really mean anything to anybody anyway. But the reason they're doing these earliest ratings is because down the road, they want to eventually say, the Super Bowl, yeah, it was watched by 104 million people, but 16 million more watched it in bars and 12 million watched them at Super Bowl parties. So guess what? It was actually watched by 130 million people. That's the end goal. That's not what's happening in October, though. But we got to get there.
Yeah, good point. We got to get there. Listen, Tony, if fans want to read what's going on at your publication, and if they want to reach out to you in particular, plug everything. Let everybody know how they can get more of this quality information that you provide.
Of my very verbose, long-winded ratings answers. They can get more of those at therap.com, where, as you mentioned, I'm TV editor. And I'm happy to engage on Twitter. It's at Tony Maglio. That's just TonyMaglio.
Well, as always, I appreciate you, Tony Maglio. You are the man, and we'll definitely, like I said, we'll be checking back in with you, because we need all this stuff to be broken down to us, all this excellent, from a TV network perspective and from a TV industry perspective, how they view the pro wrestling industry. It's great to have somebody like yourself come in and explain that stuff.
Well, I'm happy to have you there. And hey, if there are any people looking for really good publicists out there, take a look at some of the 40 people, not all publicists, of course, but some of the people that were let go at Access TV this week. Some good, hardworking people that did a lot of great work on New Japan and Women of Wrestling, and hopefully they land on their feet and end up at one of these competitors.
Man, I'll tell you, Tony Maglio is a guy that I really have a lot of time for. He has a lot of integrity, knows what he's talking about. And again, when we have this perspective, somebody who covers the entire TV industry, sharing perspective on pro wrestling, but from a TV industry point of view, that's good stuff, man. That's good stuff. We need more of that. We need more of that. And we need less of these folks who pretend to have sources or pretend to know what they're talking about. There's a lot of you out there that will get information, but you don't take the time to actually verify it. And you don't really hold yourself to the same standard that folks who actually are doing actual news. They're held to a different standard if they have any integrity, if they're a respectable publication like the Rap. I've seen some stuff on the Rap, man. They don't play around. It's good stuff. So definitely check out therap.com or at the Rap. That's THEWRAP. Tony Maglio, he's the TV editor over there, and I'll continue to have him on because he feeds a aspect of the greater conversation about pro wrestling that has been missing and is sorely needed. And I keep saying it, folks, we're going to elevate the conversation. So Great stuff there. Okay, coming up next, we're going to take a quick break, and then coming up next, part 2 of my conversation with the man, Harry Burkett from Pro Wrestling Illustrated.
Hey everybody, this is Rudy Russo, and you're listening to Duke Loves Rasslin. How do you like them, Montana?
Was the first PWI 500, was that 92? Do you remember off the top of your head?
I'm thinking 91.
91, okay. I remember, and if I'm not mistaken, I'll have to go back to my archives there, you had managers, people who haven't wrestled matches in a while.
Mr.
It was
Fuji?
almost as if you couldn't find enough people. Yeah, Mr. Fuji.
right. Well, and also, the bio for each one was only like 3 lines long. And unfortunately, we've had to cut back on the length of the bios of the current magazines because we don't have quite as many pages as we used to. But yeah, we were really on fumes trying to find 500 people to round out that list. I don't know, we might even put Harley Race in there because he wrestled Ric Flair one time in Florida when Vader didn't show up. You know, things like that. But now we've had serious discussions, should it be the PWI 1000? Just as we've recently went from the female 50 to the women's 100, but we just assume that would just water it down unnecessarily, and we don't have enough pages for all that, so that's why we're sticking with the 500. And the interesting thing is, until the internet age, and you know, now that the winner makes creates such a buzz on Twitter, like now to see WWE call out the fact that Seth Rollins was number 1 in the 500. To me, that's mind-blowing. You know, WWE used to not even recognize our existence, or at one point in history was trying to put us out of existence. So that's pretty incredible to us, you know, how much the 500 has changed.
You know, somebody asked me that question. They said, is this the first time that WWE has acknowledged the PWI 500? And I didn't know for sure, but I definitely said it's the first time I've ever noticed it.
It's the first time I've seen it on Twitter or online. I could be wrong about that. Maybe I just missed it. This year was the first time I noticed it. Now, I have to mention that WWE, they've been very gracious about allowing us to have access to the number 1 placer in the 500 each year if a WWE wrestler has made it. And we've been able to get extended interviews with them. So they have been helpful in that regard year after year.
Well, and listen, I'm going to call out every single pro wrestling promotion in the universe. You should allow access to Pro Wrestling Illustrated, legitimately the Bible of wrestling magazines. You should allow them as much access as possible, because at the end of the day, it's advertisement of your products, advertisement of your talent. Why wouldn't you grant that access?
Right.
Yeah,
and now
I
that
know it hasn't always been that way, but come on.
Right. Now that we're in this newly competitive environment, we've seen this several times over history, where when WWE is far away successful, they create a distance with us. But when the heat's on, there's a little bit of competition, the relationship becomes a lot better. And this really happened, I would say, in the late 90s, when you remember there was a period where WCW really had WWF on the ropes, and all of a sudden WWF was allowing us backstage, get photos of all the wrestlers, and so that's when it tends to happen. When a company is far away number 1, that's when access tends to close. But I think we forged a healthy relationship with them. They're fully aware that we write negative stories from time to time. Now, we might not get that wonderful smiling picture of Seth Rollins if we say, oh, we're going to bury Seth Rollins in the story, but they're fully aware that we can be critical of them, and they accept that.
Well, and I think that at some point, again, as a community, so as a whole, we should be encouraging media. Why can't there be credible pro wrestling media? Why can't that exist? And why should we have to turn to other forms of media who generally focus in other areas? Why should we have to turn to them to get credible information about pro wrestling? That's embarrassing. There's no reason why I should have to read about pro wrestling anywhere else in order to get what I would consider a credible story when Pro Wrestling Illustrated exists. You know,
yeah, I agree with that.
I don't go to other than the local papers, but I'm not going somewhere else when I want to know about sports per se. I'm still pulling up my Sports Illustrated and my ESPN magazine. Yes, folks, I still have subscriptions, by the way, the actual magazines, if you can believe it. I'm going to my magazines, man. I'm not trying to find that information. I'm not, and again, I'm not talking about what's online. I'm literally talking about the consumption of media and whether or not it makes sense. You're not going to somewhere else for your financial news. You're going to go to a leader in financial news media. So, come on. Pro Wrestling Illustrated. Give them the access. It's just, you know. Except when they put Seth Rollins on the cover. Then you have to yell.
Right. That's why I have to call my son. He won't let me in the studio.
Oh, yeah. I can believe that.
Wi-Fi access.
I can believe. So let me ask you before we let you go here, Harry. What's your take on this whole AEW thing going on? Because if you're paying attention to what I've been saying online, then you can clearly see that I'm on a mission to be honest about what we're being offered. If you're going to promote and market, more importantly, if you're going to market something, you're going to say, we're going to deliver this type of product. This is what you're going to get when you consume what we have to offer. If I feel like what I'm consuming is not what you're marketing to me, then I'm going to call it out. And I've gotten an abundance of backlash for doing that, which is okay. I don't really care. Because I do it to the WWE and New Japan and Ring of Honor as well. There's no favorites here. It just is what it is. But what's your take? Do you feel this thing can last? Or do you feel that this might be a situation where we have a lot of pop and circumstance, but they're not really built for the long haul, similar to some of your competitors in the magazine industry, when all these glossy magazines popped up in the 2000s and then they disappeared.
Right. Yeah, they can't keep track of their championship belt, right? So they don't have a procedure in place for that yet. At least Bergagna would never let Nick Bockwinkel go take it out of his duffel bag.
That's a real story. Yeah. He sure would.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're here for the long haul, just based on, the financial backing for the Khan family. I think they're very unique competitors for Vince McMahon because, people have had money before, but they've never ran anything approaching a wrestling business. I would say, a football franchise and the marketing involved gives them some savvy that maybe even Vince doesn't have. So from that perspective, it's a solid foundation. But, if we criticize them now, we're just doing them favors, especially because I think financially they're in it for the long haul. But we might even need to tamp down expectations because this AEW thing, because they've had some really good shows, are we going to get that week after week after week? Do they have the roster depth for that? That remains to be seen. And I'm confident in a lot of the people involved, like Cody Rhodes and Jim Ross, that they're pretty wise people. And they've made some smart moves, business-wise and creatively. And but it's a lot at one time. You've never had a TV show before, but all of a sudden you got a couple hours on TNT every single week. So it's going to be touchy. I think Vince McMahon has done them a favor by having NXT come on against them and getting a head start, because people will watch the first few weeks of NXT and then they'll sample AEW instead of AEW being right up against NXT, right out the gate. So I'm cautiously optimistic.
Well, that's a good take. That's a very good take. And listen, you're saying a lot of what I've been saying in the sense that they're a startup. And we should view them as what they are, which is a startup. And I don't care what business you have, when you're first getting going, you're going to make some major mistakes, and there's going to be some major setbacks. And hopefully you have some major wins as well. But you need that room to grow. That's why they say, in most situations, you don't really pay attention to a business until 3 years in. That's when you start judging them.
Right.
But this whole notion that there's going to be a war and there's going to be competition, and by the way, this is what they marketed in the beginning. They're the ones who were saying that stuff. And then when it became, the fans jumped in and was like, yeah. Then they're like, oh, wait a second, guys, hold on.
I didn't mean that. Whoa, we're back up.
Yeah, I didn't mean it.
I didn't need to smash, Triple H's throw with a hammer. That was just symbolism. Didn't mean anything.
I mean, come on, Harry. How are you going to rock the pillars of the wrestling industry when Chris Jericho is your champion? What are we talking about right now?
Okay, yeah.
You took a WWE legend and you beat your two non-WWE affiliated guys with him, and you basically said we need a WWE guy to be our top guy. You're not rocking the pillars or anything by doing that. You're doing what you should be doing from a wise business standpoint. You're taking somebody who has high visibility and who advertisers are used to spending money on. Like, when Chris Jericho wrestled for the past 20 years on TV, all these advertisers were spending money and doing spots knowing that Chris Jericho was one of the people who were going to be performing on this program, one of the main people.
Yes, he was. All you have to say is he was on Dancing with the Stars.
That too.
There you go.
Exactly. So that makes sense from a marketing standpoint, but I guess my concern is it doesn't make sense when you look at what they said they were going to deliver.
It'll be interesting to see how this shakes up because it seems to me, I was one of these people who always wanted to see, the old TNA succeed.
Sure.
Always pulling for TNA.
Same.
But it seemed like TNA from, I hate to use the word smart fans, because we're all smart fans now. But back then, it seemed like the pundits, the smart fans, never gave TNA a break. And, of course, some of the criticism was well-founded. I remember the AJ Styles Prince of Phenomenal days and things like that were truly awful.
Yep.
But it seems like AEW is on the exact opposite side of the equation where they can do no wrong. So I think the first head-to-head ratings that come in might determine, how AEW is covered.
Well, and you're my witness here, Harry. So later on, when people say that I'm just showing favoritism and I'm no good and all this other stuff, you can reference back to this if you'd be so kind. But the ratings aren't going to matter, folks. That head-to-head rating foolishness is just that. It's foolishness. Of course, AEW is not going to pop a consistently similar rating to a WWE, even if it's NXT. It's not going to happen in the beginning, and it shouldn't happen. If it does happen,
especially on TNT, where there hasn't been any wrestling for almost 20 years.
Exactly. There should be absolutely no expectation of that, and that's okay. Can AEW put out a program? Can they put out a product that gets people engaged and excited enough to come back from week to week, and their folks like a Tony Khan, who's an analytics guy, can he collect enough data to bring to the advertisers and get those big money advertisers to say, yes, we will buy commercials during your program. If that can happen, then AEW is going to stick around because they're making money for the network. They can get a better deal. They can, it all makes sense. And then they can build themselves into an eventual competitor. But that ain't happening anytime soon. Of course not. And no one should put that on them. And they shouldn't put that on themselves. More important.
Yeah, unfair burden.
That's the biggest frustration. It's like, well, guys, people are responding to what you said it was. Nobody made that up. You said it. Jericho said it, and Tony said it in the beginning, and Cody said it in the beginning. Now you want to pull back. Come on.
Right.
But, Harry, you're a very diplomatic guy, which I do appreciate about you. You're not going to go too far one way or too far the other way. except when it comes to PWI 500 and you're making Seth Rollins or that no good Roman Reigns number one. That's where you just kind of completely go in the wrong direction. But
well, we're just planning on your constant criticism, just raising our profile, and we'll sell more magazines.
Well, listen, I don't let you down, man. You know, as soon as you announce, you can rest assured I am going to be online raising hell about it. You know that.
Yeah, you and Denzel both.
Yes, exactly. I got a whole list of Denzel Washington gifs of him being frustrated with something, and I just let him out. That's right. That's the way it has to be, you know. So, Harry, if folks want to get a copy of the PWI 500, whether it be online, in print, what have you, what's the best way they can get some PWI back in their lives?
Well, you know, people talk about magazine sales being depressed. I have to say that we're on the verge of selling out this 500 issue. So if you want to order an issue, you should do that soon. The easiest way to do it is go to pwi-online.com. And the best thing to do, money-wise, is to get a subscription. And you can get it cheaper if you just want the video version, the digital version. You do get the digital version at least 3 weeks before the print version comes out. But you can't go wrong. That's probably the best way to go. And I would also encourage people to listen to our PWI podcast. Dan Murphy and Al Castle do a really good job with that. And I would encourage people also to go into our archives for July because we did a 40th anniversary roundtable with Al Castle interviewing Stu Sachs, Bill Apter, and Craig Peters, you know, from the classic PWI days. And what amazed me was 80% of it I didn't know. I knew most of the whats of the conversation, but I didn't know the whys, the why PWI was created when they already had the wrestler inside wrestling. You know, why PWI never had blood on the cover until recent years. All these little things that I've always kind of wondered about. You know, even though I worked besides Stu for quite a while, I never asked him, but I learned a lot from that podcast.
Well, that's a big deal there, Harry. Where can folks find that podcast?
Well, that's on iTunes, but you can also access it by going to the PWI online website and clicking on archives.
Great. Because this is where we're at now, where, you know, folks of all walks of life, they're really getting into consuming podcast stuff. They want to hear more. They can't get enough of it. They want to hear people talking about the things that matter to them most. And, you know, I appreciate my legions of fans all over the world who tune in every week and what have you. So, yes, I 100% encourage you. In fact, I'll post the link. Got to check out the PWI podcast. Just some great stuff, and especially this 40th anniversary. I'm going to do that as soon as we hang up the phone because I want to hear all those legends discuss the history of PWI and explain the why. That's some interesting stuff, man.
Yes.
Wow. And what about yourself? If folks want to reach out to you, because you're a person with extensive knowledge, you're a great guy, you're always willing to chat people up, and what I notice about you, Harry, is that you tend to give your opinion 9 times out of 10 when you're prompted. If you're not prompted, you just kind of follow along. But if somebody asks you directly, Harry, what do you think about this? You got a lot to say. But you kind of hold on to it until somebody, you know, gives you a little nudge first. So
that's right. Doesn't take much of it. Just a little one.
Yeah, just a little one. But so if folks want to give you a little nudge and really hear more from Harry Burkett specifically, how can they reach you?
Probably the easiest way is on Twitter. I'm at Harry Burkett 1, and that's Harry Burkett 1.
Great. Well, listen, Harry Burkett, as always, I appreciate you joining us on the Duke Loves Rasslin podcast, and, you know, obviously take the permanent marker and put me down. We got to have you come back when the women's 100 comes out, and that conversation is going to go one of two ways, Harry.
Oh, boy.
Either I'm going to be praising
I'm dreading it already.
I'm either going to be praising you to the hills for finally seeing the light, or we're going to do what we've been doing for a few years now, where I'm just going to be complaining the whole damn time because once again you guys are conspiring to hurt my feelings.
I just might be back in the principal's office.
You know, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I could talk to Harry Burkett forever. I mean, and what's funny is we had a long conversation before we hit record. Had a long conversation that I actually had to split up into two sections there. So you heard part one last week, which was excellent. And thank you everyone who listened and shared it. There was a lot of great discussion around the PWI 500 and that punk, Seth Rollins winning, the discussion of the PWI 500, how it was lacking in the amount of black wrestlers on the list and the possibility of that changing in the future and all that good stuff. It was just great, meaty discussion. And then this week, you know, as you heard, you know, we were just shooting the breeze about everything, man, and just real nerdy pro wrestling talk like we do. And then the funny part is when we stopped recording, we ended up on the phone for another 2 hours continuing to talk pro wrestling stuff. So I got a lot of time for Harry Burkett. I just think that he is class personified, just a really, really good dude that I always have time for. So again, shout out to Harry Burkett, and we'll have him back. We'll have him back after the Women's 100 comes out, and you know, folks are already talking about it. Folks are already asking questions about it, and I'm telling you right now, Harry, like I just said, if you guys don't do the right thing, you're going to hear from me, especially if you make that punk Becky Lynch the number one women's wrestler. That's just not going to happen. I'm telling you right now, I will call Space Force. Okay? I will call Space Force and I will report Harry Burkett and Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and I will have you all deported to some kind of far off galaxy outside of the Milky Way, Jack. I'm telling you right now, I can make this work. Okay? Don't play around. I got connections, Jack. Just saying. You don't call Ghostbusters, you call Space Force. Okay. That's right. Folks, before we wrap this up this week, I did want to talk about something pretty serious that we saw on SmackDown. Nikki Cross, who I adore Nikki Cross. I think she's fantastic. She did an interview on Lillian Garcia's podcast, Chasing Glory, which has really developed into, in my opinion, one of the top podcasts you'll ever hear. It's just a really great program. Lillian somehow, some way gets folks on her show and they reveal some really big time personal stuff about themselves. And it's just amazing how everyone opens up and really bears their soul. So it's good stuff. But you know, Nikki is she's adorable. Just absolutely, she's fantastic. They did an angle where Mandy Rose gets on the microphone and she talks about how Nikki Cross will never look like her and, you know, she's better looking and all this other garbage. And just, when do we get to the point where we get past that type of stuff? And listen, don't get me wrong here, okay? I was a big fan of Ravishing Rick Rude. And Ravishing Rick Rude, before every match, he would get on the microphone and he would say, what I'd like to have is for all you fat, disgusting sweat hogs, you know, potato chip eating couch potatoes, shut your mouth and while I take my robe off and your women get to see what a real man looks like. I'm paraphrasing, but that was usually the point of what he was saying. He was going to talk trash about the people in the crowd. Look at me, I'm muscled up, I'm handsome. You don't look like me. Your women want me, whatever. And loosely, that's what Mandy Rose is doing right now, which is not a bad thing. She is a very attractive young lady. I get that. But man, when do we get to the point where we can deliver these sensibilities and we can deliver that style storyline, but do it in a manner that actually is more engaging? And I don't have the answer to that question, so don't get me wrong. I mean, look, I'm not a pro wrestling writer. I can't write a wrestling show. I've never done that. I'm not going to say I can't. I've never done it. I don't have that experience. So I can't sit here and act like I know better. But I can tell you as a consumer, I'm a little fed up with these low-hanging fruit storylines. And I get that it's easy to do because it's easy for the audience to understand. Who can't understand a super pretty girl telling everybody she's better looking than them? You can understand that. You can understand somebody who's conceited and think they're all that and what have you. And I will say that I was happy that Nikki Cross won the match. That was nice to see the babyface win. And Nikki Cross is not an unattractive person. She's very beautiful. So that, the whole thing just kind of weird in that regard. But she's not all glammed up like Mandy Rose. When do we get to the point where we get away from this low-hanging fruit stuff? If there were more layers to that, something that you could really sink your teeth into, then I could really, at least be along for the ride and it wouldn't feel so uncomfortable. I don't know. And I know a lot of people online, especially on Twitter, you guys reacted and just cringed at it too. So I know I wasn't alone here. You literally have some of the best pro wrestling talent in the world in the WWE, especially that women's division that's been kicking everybody's butt. Oftentimes they're outperforming the men. Do we really need I look better than you, I'm hot, you're ugly? Do you really need that storyline in 2019 and beyond? This isn't the Divas era where that was a thing. Okay? It's 2019. Nikki Cross is a hell of a wrestler. Mandy Rose is still learning. Give me a break. Okay? Give me a break. So, I want to see the action, and the action was good. It was a good match. I wonder who's writing this stuff and why they're writing it. And it goes back to the same point of representation. Do we have the right people in the room creating this content? How many women are in the room? How many women are providing input on these storylines? And if you're telling me that there's only like one woman in the room, that's not enough. If you're telling me there's no women in the room, that's certainly not enough. Traditionally, pro wrestling shows are written by men. This is a fact. It doesn't matter if they're in the wrestling business or if they're writers who were brought in or what have you. Men write these storylines. And you can tell because that is such a simple, ridiculous storyline to go with when there were so many different ways you could go with Nikki Cross and Mandy Rose. What if Mandy Rose says, I'm a better wrestler than you? What if she did that? What if I'm better than you in every way and I'm a better wrestler than you? I can do everything in this ring. And everyone would just laugh about that because that's not true, but she's a heel. So it kind of plays into that. Step out of the box a little bit here. Deliver something that has some layers to it. And let's stop with this low-hanging fruit stuff because I got to tell you, you're the WWE, you're the big dog, you're the top promotion. At some point, you have to recognize that is just not good enough anymore. And it's silly. And I don't know who you're trying to market that to. But I can tell you that out of all the things that happened in that match and in that exchange, I can tell you that the fans aren't walking away saying, oh, the best part about that was that Mandy Rose says she's hotter than Nikki Cross. No, I'm pretty sure everyone appreciated the wrestling. Just throwing it out there. I don't know. I'm not trying to, once again, this is not right to censor. I'm not here to act like I'm Mr. Moral and all that other stuff. I like some questionable content. I loved when Samoa Joe was telling AJ Styles that he was daddy and he's going to go kiss his wife or something like that. And hey, maybe that's a double standard on my part. I thought that was interesting stuff. There were some layers to that. They were friends. So Samoa Joe knows AJ's family. There was some layers to that. I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed when Samoa Joe told Rey Mysterio Jr. that he was going to be the father to his son that his son never had, or he's going to discipline his son the way Rey never did. There's some layers to that. I can dig into that. You can go some places. I just don't know how far you're going with Mandy Rose saying that she's hotter than Nikki Cross and you'll never look like me and all that. Who the hell wants to look like you anyway? It's a wrestling show. You know who you should want to look like, Mandy Rose? You should want to look like the people who wrestle. Imagine that. And I'm not blaming Mandy Rose, because I think that for a person with her lack of experience, she's come a long way. She's done a great job. She certainly isn't Eva Marie. I'll say that much. Mandy Rose clearly is dedicated to the wrestling. That's clear. And just by looking at what she does in the ring. I just think it's unfortunate that they put her in a situation where she has this storyline that, quite frankly, is not going to get her over in the end. Does not lead to anything that we don't need it in this day and age. Even in WoW Superheroes, there's more layers to stuff like that. If you look at their characters, even the ones who are conceited and what have you, Beverly Hills Babe or whatever, there's more layers to how they deliver this stuff. So, I don't know. Let me know what you think, folks. Seriously, head over to Twitter and Facebook. Duke Loves Rasslin. Let me know what you think about it. Because I personally, I'm past that I look better than you stuff. Just doesn't do it for me. I'm past the weight, the fat or skinny shaming storylines as well, past that. This little man stuff that they have with Chad Gable, I hope they're past that. Calling him little man and saying he's too short and all that crap. Come on. Stop being lazy and write some damn content. Is that too much to ask for? Is it too much to ask for if you're going to give me a storyline that you actually put some effort into it? Because I'm telling you right now, you could have all the credentials in the world. You could have the best education. You could have written for the top TV shows like Raw and SmackDown are. None of that means a lick of beans if you're writing, this person is too short, that person's not as hot as me, that person is fat. If you're writing that garbage in 2019, you're disrespecting your entire education, you're disrespecting your workplace, and you're disrespecting yourself, because that's garbage. And I don't give a damn if this is what Vince McMahon prefers, by the way. It's garbage. And we just don't need it in 2019 going forward. We don't need it. There's so much that we could be talking about. There's so much meat and storylines that you could really grab people with. We don't need that low-hanging fruit garbage. So let me know what you think, folks. That's my take on that. Listen, I appreciate all the guests this week. Teal Piper, she's fantastic. Tony Maglio, my buddy there. Harry Burkett, Uncle Harry from Pro Wrestling Illustrated, great guy. Tony Maglio from the Rap. Just real fun. Join us next week, folks. In fact, we'll see. Definitely going to have another couple of special guests. Keep this train rolling. That's what we're here for. Deliver the best. Be kind to yourselves. Be kind to others. Take it away, Tony Schiavone.
Mr. Tony Schiavone, and we're desperately out of time on Duke Loves Wrestling.